Hello, everyone, and welcome to today's training, Accessible Mobile Environments. Please note, the information found in this presentation is based upon the experience and understanding of the information by WeCo's staff and should not be construed as legal advice. Regarding the development and implementation of digital accessibility practices, it is advisable to seek the advice of qualified legal counsel. The information in this presentation is the property of the Wehrman Collaborative LLC. Please ask us before distributing this information by contacting us at accessinfo, ACCESSINFO at the WeCo.com, THEWECO. Thank you. This slide shows the title of the presentation and includes WeCo's logo. The WeCo logo is repeated on most of the slides in this presentation. Next slide. Your instructors today are me, Suen Rodriguez. I'm the director of the Accessibility Services. During my presentation parts, you may hear some pauses. This is due to me having a speech impediment and also using the fact that I use a screen reader as well. Also assisting with today's webinar is Tyler Malone, accessibility specialist. On this slide, it is a photo of Suen and Tyler. Next slide. WeCo offers annual accessibility audit services for both desktop and mobile that can help your team understand which areas of your project do not meet accessibility requirements. We also provide customized recommendations on how to fix the issues that are identified. Our mobile audits can support both Android and iOS platforms. WeCo also offers usability testing services, which provide key insights into how our testers living with disabilities view your project by having them complete tasks to verify that your website or software truly works for users with disabilities. WeCo's testers live with one or more disabilities that fall within at least one of the 4 primary disability groups, which are cognitive, mobility, hearing, and sight. Finally, WeCo offers various consulting packages and training options on topics relating to accessibility and disability. On this slide is a photo of two hands typing on a laptop computer. Next slide. Here is a quick summary of what we're going to be talking about today. First, we will talk about the differences between desktop and mobile accessibility needs for users with disabilities. Next, we will go over the top 3 things that your team can do to ensure mobile accessibility on your platforms. And finally, we will provide some resources that you can check out for more information about accessibility. Note, we will be answering questions at the end of this presentation. This slide includes a photo of a notebook and a pair of eyeglasses with a pencil and a coffee mug in the background. Next slide. We're going to start things off by going over some of the main differences between accessibility needs for a desktop environment versus a mobile environment. Next slide. Some of the common differences between desktop and mobile layouts are screen size. Mobile devices have limited screen sizes in comparison to desktop devices. A smaller screen means that users can see a lot less information at once. It also pushes more of the page's content below the fold, requiring users to scroll through a page's content more often. Smaller screens also increase the number of interactions users living with disabilities must execute in order to navigate. This can cause undue fatigue for users. Content and control positioning. Desktop environments have spread out, often using multi-column designs. Navigation menus and controls are often expanded and static, and user interfaces are able to take advantage of wider screens to avoid becoming cluttered or messy. Mobile environments, on the other hand, must strictly prioritize content and control positioning to avoid overpacking small screens with too much of either. Designers should think carefully about how they position content and controls. Users living with disabilities often rely on predictable, familiar layout designs to reduce the difficulty of accessing new products. Portrait versus landscape screens. Most desktop displays have a landscape orientation. However, the opposite is true for mobile devices, as most users hold their devices in a portrait orientation. With that being said, some users living with disabilities do benefit from a robust landscape presentation. Designers are encouraged to take advantage of landscape modes increased horizontal space to enlarge controls and content views, as well as more cleanly defined visual structure. This slide includes a photo of a man interacting with a digital tablet device. Next slide. Touch targets are parts of a screen that users can interact with and include all types of content controls and even some forms of content. The Web Content Accessibility Guidelines, or the WCAG 2.1, recommend that desktop environments provide a touch targets of at least 44 by 44 CSS pixels. Mobile touch target size, where recommendations differ by platform. However, the general rule of thumb is to ensure that a touch target size is at least 1 centimeter by 1 centimeter. That is 0.4 inches by 0.4 inches. For users living with motor and visual disabilities, in particular, ensuring large enough touch targets allows users to interact with the target the first time. Measuring mobile touch target size in physical size rather than CSS pixel size ensures a more uniform presentation across devices with different pixel densities. A woman working on a digital laptop at a desk is shown on the slide. Next slide. Where desktop environments mostly use a keyboard or cursor or controls, mobile devices also often implement a range of simple to complex touch-based gesture interactions, such as swiping and pinching. Gestures can present unique challenges for users living with motor disabilities who may have partial or no control over their hands, arms, or upper body. Mobile devices also benefit from a suite of hardware sensors, which can be leveraged to provide extra accessibility features. For example, a camera can scan payment methods for a blind or low vision user. Shaking or tapping the back of a device can activate selectors for users living with a motor disability. And haptics and flashes can supplement audio feedback for deaf users. This slide shows a person browsing on a digital tablet with a laptop computer in the background. Next slide. It is not only important to consider the differences between desktop and mobile platforms, but also the differences between disparate mobile platforms. Each platform provides its own set of accessibility tools, which complements a particular set of philosophies and priorities. This makes documentation review especially important. Accessibility features are often not emphasized or poorly explained. At this point, you may be asking yourself, how can you possibly design for accessibility if everything is so platform dependent? Although it is important to understand the accessibility features available to your primary platform, there are various steps that you can improve that will improve accessibility no matter where your product is hosted. Next slide.
In this section, we're going to talk about a few things you can do to improve your product for mobile accessibility. Next slide. Responsive design should be a top priority for really any company. For non-disabled users, unresponsive websites can be the difference between two either pleasant or unpleasant aesthetic viewpoints. For disabled users, it can mean completely or partially breaking either usability or accessibility. A good example of how non-responsive products can cause difficulties for users living with disabilities is actually an iPhone app being used on an iPad. If a user attempts to use an iPad app or an iPhone app on an iPad, they can encounter a few different concerning issues. Landscape or portrait mode may not be available. Text, graphics, and controls might be more difficult to perceive or access. And app features may be missing or disabled. And iPads do have a natural zoom setting that does help blow up some apps that are meant for iPhone, but it can still cause some compatibility issues. These kinds of issues can instantly render an app essentially unusable for a variety of reasons. Next slide. Many accessibility considerations on desktop do carry over to mobile in some particular ways. A lot of quick fixes are universal, meaning they can be applied on both desktop and mobile. And I'm going to go ahead and list a few of those with some explanations. So the first thing you can do is add alt text to images. And this can be done to either label decorative images, or it can be done to add descriptive descriptions to images using alt text. And this is going to help users with low vision and blindness understand what's a decoration versus what is an image that conveys meaning within the context of the product. The next thing you can do is add text labels and accessible names to all controls in a product. And this is going to be extremely useful for users who are using screen readers on mobile, a lot of controls that don't have text labels are just going to be announced as button, 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 or clickable, and that's going to cause a lot of confusion. Users might not be able to access the app at all, or they might have to point and tap around in order to figure out what's going on. Another thing you can do is add programmatically associated form fields to form fields, and change from text fields to selectors. Programmatically associated form fields can be useful for users with visual disabilities or who are using assistive technology based on voice to text. And it can also help cognitive users remember what the purpose of the text field is. A good example of this is when a user using a screen reader on mobile is swiping from text field to text field, they might be hitting next instead of going down the page and reading all the content. So it's really good to have the fields announce. Selectors are extremely useful for users with motor disabilities who might not necessarily be able to type as well with text boxes. It can also be useful for users with low vision who would prefer to use selectors because it can take a little bit more time with a screen reader to select characters. Adding captioning, audio description, and descriptive transcripts can be extremely useful for multiple user groups. Providing multiple versions of accessibility for multimedia is extremely important because multimedia can be difficult to access. Captions are especially useful for users living with hearing disabilities. And this works the same way as it does on desktop. You have captioning put into the media player. Audio description can be good for users with low vision or who are blind who can't see the content of the video, the visual content. And you can have the video itself can have audio description, or you can have a separate version of the video that has audio description. And descriptive transcripts can be extremely useful for users with hearing disabilities, vision disabilities, and who are blind deaf. For users who are deafblind, this can be actually the only way they can access the content. The next thing you can do is implement pagination and semantic structure. Pagination is going to be very helpful for users who might be fatigued partway through a long process. If anyone's ever filled out a multi-part form, it can be a little frustrating when you don't have a disability. It's doubly frustrating when you do. It takes longer. It's more difficult. Semantic structure is extremely useful for understanding not only what the content says, but the purpose of the content and skimming through to find information that's needed versus information that's not. And then the last thing you can do is avoid hogging processing power. A lot of more complicated processes these days might be a little more demanding on mobile devices. Screen readers do have to process information separately before presenting it to users. So they're going to buffer information, any text or media content, and then present it in an accessible format. Making sure that you don't have a lot of heavy animations or graphics or anything like that is going to be a boon to anybody either using an older device or using assistive technology who really needs you to avoid taking up the processing space. Finally, providing, next slide. Okay, finally, providing customizability inside your product can be extremely useful for users living with disabilities. A lot of users living with disabilities already have a way they prefer to access content. Each disability is slightly different, and being able to tweak settings inside the product itself can be a very useful way of making sure that, for instance, text is big enough, making sure that color contrast is good, that sort of thing. So in addition to the system level settings for accessibility, it can be very useful to ensure that the user can manipulate settings within the product. Some examples of this are things like a light/dark mode toggle, manipulating the size and font of text, and using haptic and sound feedback in addition to traditional feedback methods. Next slide. As we wrap things up, we're going to give you some accessibility resources you can reference. Next slide. If you'd like to learn more from WeCo, you can access our website at theweco.com. Our website includes a free accessibility library. We have an events page with info about webinars, workshops, etc. We regularly post blog posts on a variety of accessibility topics. And we have a lot more. You can also reach out directly to the Access team via email at accessinfo@theweco.com. And you can call us at 855-849-5050, extension 1. Thanks for taking our training.
That concludes our presentation. Are there any questions, moderator?
Yeah, it sounds like we had a question of what is semantic content?
Right. All right, Tyler, I will let you respond to this question.
Sure. So semantic structure, semantic content is content which conveys meaning. Semantic structure is kind of the programmatic way that we convey that content. This is stuff like headings, lists, that sort of thing, where if you just write out the visual presentation of like headings and lists, then you can still see it, but people can't necessarily pick it up with assistive technology. If you use the correct elements to indicate programmatically that they are headings and lists, then people will be able to skip to them and understand what their purpose is within the context of the content. Does that answer the question?
So, for example, that would be an HTML tag. If it's going to be a heading, you know, it'd be like an H1 heading tag being used. That's how assistive technology conveys that information to users.
We also have another question. Thank you. Is there any situation in which keyboard accessibility is needed for a mobile device, i.e. visible focus and skip navigation button?
Oh yeah, I'm low vision and I predominantly use a keyboard to access mobile apps. You can in most cases use a full QWERTY keyboard to access mobile apps. And for instance, on iOS, which is what I use, you can use a lot of the traditional methods of navigation like the tab key. And visual focus comes along with the screen readers on iOS and Android, and you can manipulate the size and emphasis of visual indicators for focus. So that is definitely something you're going to want to consider.
All right. Thank you. Any other questions? Feel free to send them to the chat or ask them out loud. It doesn't look like there are any more questions. So if that wraps it up, then thank you everyone for coming today. Is there anything else you'd like to say, Tyler, Sue?
Nope, just wanted to just also convey on behalf of Tyler and I, our thanks for you for joining this webinar as well.
Mhm.
All right, thank you everyone.
Thank you guys. That was awesome.
Thank you so much.
Okay, good job.